Hey guys, remember when PC games didn't come in boxes? Space, the future. Mankind has conquered the solar system and we've stockpiled a huge amount of refuse in the process. Now we have a giant space vacuum cleaner. No, I'm not kidding, this is what the inlay basically says, and we've been sucking up all our garbage with it. But refuse collection attracts rats, and apparently being in space is no deterrent to that rule, because a giant alien space rat, no, I really am not kidding, this really is the plot of the game, a giant alien space rat has arrived and it's attacking humanity for its garbage or something. So one scientist has created one ship, the only ship that can take on the alien threat that is Rath-Tha. This is a bloody stupid game. I'm just going to come right out and say it. It's weird as all hell and it's a basic vertically scrolling shooter. That's why I bought it at a car boot sale back in 1993. Well, that and the fact that I'd been given an Amstrad Mega PC for Christmas in 1992 and I didn't have many games to play on it, so I was looking for something cheap that would run on my new machine. The game was programmed by Positive in Spain for a Spanish audience. Consequently, finding a copy of Rath-Tha in English is quite rare. The copies available online tend to be the Spanish language versions, which have the better title tune, by the way. Because those are the ones that are around in abundance. Don't worry if you can't speak Spanish though, because there's not a lot of reading involved in this game. It's mainly the menu and the redefining of keys that you'll need to worry about here. My PC copy is in English, so we'll be taking a look at that first. I had to pull the contents of the floppy onto a hard drive and run the game in DOSBox to get it to work, and even then, I had to emulate a very slow processor to get anywhere. Rath-Tha is written with the game loop tied to the processor cycles, which was quite standard back in the day. And unfortunately that means it's a problem on modern hardware because the game is expecting you to be running it on a low-spec 286 PC. Even back in the day, the game ran quite fast on my Mega PC, which was only a 386 running at 25 MHz. But still, if you have lightning reflexes or you just fancy giving yourself a ridiculous challenge, you can try playing it at modern speeds. But don't say I didn't warn you. As you can see, the game is garish and hard to look at for long periods of time. It's no oil painting, but what is here is quite sturdy as all games go. It's a fun, rather playable shooter, and I remember finding it quite a challenge back in the 90s. It's by no means the best shooter I've ever played, even back then it was quite average if I'm honest. But it's enjoyable and you can really have a lot of fun with it if you're prepared to give it a chance. The title tune is written for the PC speaker, which is basically a beeper, but the Spanish language version has managed to put together a decent tune even if it is just beeps. Be warned though, it's one of those tunes that will get stuck in your head. I first heard it many years ago when I was looking for a copy of this because I'd lost my disc. Thankfully I found it now, but back then I'd lost it, so I was looking for a copy online, and I found the Spanish version with this great tune. Sadly it wasn't a tune I recognised because the English version doesn't have this tune. What it has instead is just weird noises, blips and bloops, and it makes no sense that they took it out. Either way, I first heard the Spanish version many years ago, and I still find myself humming it from time to time, even to this day. It is quite a catchy tune. So anyway, what does the game itself actually involve? Well, you're this little green ship, and you have to fly along this half-pipe, shooting at flying rat heads and collecting as much crap as you can, all the while avoiding the masses of enemies and enemy firepower. If you pick up a box, it will be added to your list of 3 boxes down the left-hand side of the screen. What does that represent? I have no idea. If you pick up a bag of rubbish, it will deplete the rubbish bin on the right-hand side of the screen. Pick up a sheet of metal, and it increases your armour, which you'll be running low on quickly because dodging all of the enemies is really hard. There are also power-ups and anti-power-ups. Pick up a red science flask, and your controls will swap around, which is annoying, but don't worry too much because it won't last that long. Conversely, if you pick up the elephant head, you'll go faster, because apparently elephants make you faster. Why? I don't know man, I didn't do it. Anyway, once you get past the first area, your armour will be repaired and it's time to fight the waves of rats all over again. Only now, there are barriers in your way as well. This part is quite tricky, because hitting the explosive points on the barriers enough times to cause them to blow up is quite difficult. The waves upon waves of enemies will absorb all of your firepower if you're not careful, and if you hit the barrier, you will lose a life. It's a hard level, but do keep at it because you'll make your way through eventually. Then, it's out into space. This is a very tricky level, and I have to admit I've not managed to get past it. The background changes from the inside of the ship to a starfield with more planets around you than you can shake a stick at, and you won't have much time for stick shaking, let me tell you. There's a meteor shower, or something, going on, and you have to dodge the incoming waves of projectiles. You can't shoot them, or at least I couldn't shoot them. My fire button didn't seem to be responding at all, so I hope that was on purpose. You just have to dodge everything. I couldn't do that. I kept crashing into whatever these things that are raining down the screen actually are, and that's where it was game over for me. All in all, I'm actually quite impressed with Rath-Tha. It's a complete game on a single floppy disk. It's fun, it's challenging, and while it doesn't push the PC to its limits even for the early days of the system, it is a decent game, and I've always enjoyed it. But it wasn't exclusive to the PC. This game actually came out on quite a few systems, so let's take a look at some of them for comparison. We'll start with the ZX Spectrum version, and you'll see why pretty quickly. Yeah, it's the PC version, only with fewer colours. It looks the same, it plays the same, it's about the same speed, which is great, and it sounds pretty much the same as the Spanish version. It's the same game really, except the lack of colours make it far more difficult to actually play. You see, the background to the space tunnel you're flying through is quite detailed, and that's true on both the Spectrum and the PC versions. The PC has a distinct advantage here because the colours let you quickly differentiate between enemies and enemy fire and the background itself. You can't do that on the Spectrum, everything blends into everything else. The result is that the game is really tough on the Spectrum, which isn't great and it really shouldn't have had to do that. So, we'll leave it there. The Spectrum game is playable, it's enjoyable, but it's really hard because of the fact that everything blends into everything else. So let's move on. Let's see how my favourite system of all time fared. The Amstrad CPC got a version of this game, and thankfully it has multiple colours in it. Once again, the lovely title tune is present, just as it was on the Spectrum, but here it's taking advantage of the CPC's sound chip to make the tune sound even nicer than it was before. Sadly, that is where the compliments will end. The game is clearly a specky port, with a few extra colours thrown in for good measure. It's slow, it's jerky, and quite often I found the controls simply didn't want to respond, or at least not respond quick enough. As a result, the game is more difficult to play, and is nowhere near fast enough for my liking. If you haven't played the other versions, the speed won't put you off, because it's a decent enough game and goodness knows we've had far worse on the Amstrad, but if you've played the PC version, stick with that rather than jump into the CPC. Finally, there was a version for the MSX, and sadly I couldn't get it to load. From the screenshots I've seen though, it looks to be a straight specky port, and that would of course come with all of the issues that come with being a straight specky port to the MSX. It will be slower. Naturally, this means that all the background detail and the confusion issues that were present in the Spectrum version will be here in the MSX version as well, just at a much lower speed. So there you have it, Rath-Tha. It's a game that I've been meaning to cover for quite some time. It's important to me as games go, because it was one of the first games that I bought for my new Mega PC, and it's also the first shoot 'em up that I got to play on the PC. It's not a bad game, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I have to admit that even at the point in time when the game was released, there would have been better shooters on the PC. There certainly were on all of the other systems. It may not be the best thing out there, but it still has a fond place in my heart. So there you are. Rath-Tha is one of those oddities of the early PC era when the PC wasn't something that was generally seen in homes, but was becoming more of an occasionally seen item. Of course, now it dominates everywhere, but back then it was still like the Amiga was a big thing. But the PC did have its lovers, like myself, I did love it. And as a consequence, some of these games did turn up from time to time. But they're a bit odd. They didn't come in proper boxes. They looked like just copied things, but they're actually the genuine product. It's an oddity. But there you are, anyway. Fun game. I actually did like it a lot. I played it a fair amount back in the day, even though it was a little bit fast for my liking, because it was running on a computer that it wasn't designed for. It was designed for something a lot slower. But there you are. That's how things were back then. At least these days we can complain about occasional drops in FPS rather than, wow, it's too fast. But anyway, I'm rambling now, so I'll see you tomorrow for another GameHammer Daily. Bye-bye!